I don't even know how they look. So for instance, I don't know how Pratishikha looks. Yeah. I don't know how Upasana looks or how Nishamoni looks. Shantana, hello. Nice seeing all of you. Hello, Momi. Nice seeing all of you. Yeah. By the end of this class, like I keep saying, please ask if you have any problems. As far as the assignments are concerned, in which you have to make your group presentations, please start working on the group presentation so that last minute you don't have. I don't know how you people work. In my university, my students are a type who will not work until the 11th hour. So if there is an assignment next week, entire week they won't do anything. Say the assignment is on Wednesday, they'll start working from Monday or Tuesday, and then they'll say this problem and that problem. Don't do that, because anyway, I have just allotted 8 classes with me. As part of that, the last 2 days, which is your 23rd and 24th, we will have the presentations. I mentioned this yesterday, I'll also mention it once today. We'll have 4 groups. Parthojit sir by Monday will give me the list of names of people who will be in which group. And accordingly, you will have to make a presentation. And please, whoever is speaking on that day, the entire group, turn your camera on, turn your microphone on. It could be interactive. Make your presentation on any issue of digital humanities which you think is relevant. This presentation would last for 20 minutes, followed by a 10-minute discussion. In that 10-minute discussion, either the students can ask questions, or if we have questions, if Partho sir has questions, we can ask questions. Accordingly, we will have 2 group presentations, 20 plus 30 minutes on 23rd, and 2 group presentations on 24th. Now, it's only an additional disadvantage that I do not understand Assamese. So I have requested Parthojit sir to be around in case anybody speaks something which I don't understand. But my general request to all of you is to make your presentations either in English or in Hindi or Bangla. These are the 3 languages I understand. But I don't think anybody in the class knows or speaks Bangla, so that's too much to expect. So it would be great if you can make your presentations in English or Hindi. That's not to disregard or disrespect your language. That's just because I don't understand the language you speak and you don't understand the language I speak. Is this bit clear with all of you? Yeah? Good.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Today and tomorrow we will talk about, in your course structure, it's the second unit as part of your unit 2, which is challenges and the future of digital humanities. So before anything, I want to quickly mention that, of course, all these topics are interrelated. When we're talking about theories and debates, it's not as if we are not immediately addressing challenges or the future prospects. All of these are very interrelated. So what we generally try and do as part of these lectures is we pull it to one extended whole where we end up talking about major theories, debates, possibilities, challenges. So how many of you have heard of the SWOT analysis? Some kind of a SWOT analysis. The possibilities are the strengths and the weakness are the challenges. So we go on and so forth likewise. The real deal that we have to understand is more about, after talking about theories and debates in digital humanities, when we begin to talk about challenges and future, in my understanding for this class and the next class, we need to focus more on the practices of digital humanities. So we have already spoken about the theories. We'll also now talk about the real practical possibilities of where and how to implement digital humanities. This will last for today and tomorrow. So next week, Monday and Tuesday, we will talk about digital humanities in India. In that, I will share screen and explain explicitly about at least one major project, which I think all of you should know from India. It is a project called Project Bichitra. It is an online variogram of the entire works of Rabindranath Tagore. It has been done with the grants that were given to this public university called Jadavpur University, which is in Kolkata, West Bengal. And it's one of the most brilliant examples of citing how to do digital humanities, particularly from the Indian subcontinent. Because today we will already discuss the challenges and the potential that also digital humanities has. After that, we will look at a real project and see how it goes about. So every time I keep speaking, and sometimes Devashish in the end of the day shares the YouTube link with me where I have spoken. Even then, when I go through the lecture once again, I see I'm the only person speaking. Nobody else is speaking from the class. I really would like to take some interactive feedback from all of you also. Does anybody have any idea about what do you think could be the real challenges of digital humanities? And of course, with the challenges will come the idea of the future prospects also. My question would be in two parts. What are the challenges of digital humanities? And secondly, if the challenges faced in digital humanities from India is any different from the challenges faced in digital humanities elsewhere. So one is a universal context of the different kinds of challenges that can exist in digital humanities. Second, of course, is a more specific question. What do you think is the challenge of digital humanities from India? Anybody? And you will be able to understand and explain this because you're also from literary departments. You're from a very important literary department. That's the language and literature department of Assamese from a central university. So what do you think are the challenges of digital humanities generally, as also particularly from India, which is our primary focus? Because after all, we will end up being digital humanities experts and scholars, not from any other part of the world, but from this country. What are the challenges? Anybody, please speak to me, and don't feel afraid, because after all, I'm not marking you today for what you're speaking. We just want to make the class interactive, and I want to find out how your minds are operating. So far away, moved temporally, geographically. I don't know if you are there with me in the understanding. Anybody tell me about anything that you recognize as a challenge? Is anybody? By now, has the class begun to understand what digital humanities is? Or are you still stuck as much in blue waters as you were before we started doing the online lectures? Do you have any bit of idea now about what digital humanities is? Any more than what you had earlier? Yes? Oh, please, somebody respond. You are a master's final year class and all very mature, all of you. And we're having a friendly discussion. I also need to understand how much you have understood. Does Bijumuni want to speak? Bijumuni, can I take your understanding of what you think is a challenge?
Yes, ma'am, the maintenance is actually the whole process for
Sorry,
uh,
I can't hear you. Can you be louder?
and my network is not good.
Or network's not good? Okay, I'll ask somebody else. Ripu, can you tell me what you think is a challenge of digital humanities? Challenge is something which you people would be able to tell me more. That is because some of us who have been working in digital humanities for a significant time now, we understand what the challenges are, but we have done enough to overcome some bits of it. Probably you will find what's more challenging, what is more difficult in understanding.
Ma'am, I think the challenging part is main part is the digitization process, and actually we are not so familiar with those digital humanities related work.
Mhm. I understand what Bijumoni is saying. Okay, I will now ask questions. Please turn the cameras on, please. This is going to be interesting. I will ask questions and you agree with me or disagree with me. My first question is, do you think it is challenging that every bit of academic scholarship around digital humanities has mostly happened only in the English language? Therefore, you do not find any reading material either in Hindi or in Bangla or in Assamese. So all digital humanities scholarship has happened centered around the English language. Is it a challenge for people from the Department of Assamese in studying digital humanities or not?
Yes, ma'am.
So
Yes,
please understand, because it's from the challenges that we can go to the next step, that we can find out the possibilities and the future of digital humanities. I really think, and this is also something which I think after doing classes with you, I think about it at a more enhanced level now. I think it's stupid of me to constantly keep speaking to you all in a 1 hour lecture about digital humanities in English, expecting that all of you necessarily will understand all the English that I'm speaking, even when all of you may not have received formal training in learning or speaking the English language. You are not the Department of English at Tejpur University. You are a department of Assamese. It's a nice thing that when I'm constantly speaking every day for 1 hour, all of you are cooperating with me and giving me enough respect. But the other part to the problem is it is actually true that we do not have reading material about at least let's say enough reading material in all the Indian languages talking about digital humanities. Is that a problem or not? Is that a challenge? Remember in yesterday's class we were talking about the white supremacist position or the countries of the global north position of digital humanities. It's not just for a theoretical debate to say that, it's a real problem. And therefore, if it is a real problem, how can one approach it? Now I'm talking about the theories, the books about the academic scholarship about digital humanities. I'm not talking so much about the projects. How can one overcome this? I think at your level, you all can start either having it to ask like a class needs. You all can start having some kind of student seminars or paper presentations about digital humanities in the vernaculars. Unless you start practicing digital humanities in your vernaculars, you of course can always speak and write in English. I'm not discouraging you from doing that. But I also think that if we have to percolate the essence of digital humanities to the nook and corner of the country, we have to acknowledge that English is not the only language that India speaks. We have to understand that English is one of the many languages that India speaks. And even if you're formally trained in digital humanities, it can be absolutely possible that you are not trained in the language in which you are studying digital humanities. The language itself will keep acting as a handicap towards your academic pursuit of DH. The second thing, of course, is to start writing, is to bring out collection of essays. Just speaking, and if you look at the YouTube lectures that we have recorded and uploaded, how many viewerships are we getting anyway? You will not get enough viewership because people are not being made aware of the different smaller pockets in which we are doing digital humanities from India. And it's really so pocketed that the chance of even 100 people looking at our video seems to be really obscure. So the next thing you could do is you could start having your own publication about digital humanities. If you're comfortable in English, you can do it in English. If you're comfortable in your Assamese language, you can do it in your Assamese language. It's important to bring out your own material and talk about your own challenges in that. So my suggestion is stop accepting America's problems and challenges as your problem and challenge. Because when they are talking about their challenge, they have no clue about the socio-political, geographic realities from where we are doing digital humanities. It's so very different. So I suggest all of you start talking about digital humanities in your languages. You start writing in about critical issues in digital humanities in your languages. Then, of course, you have to really build in projects in your language. Unless you start building your own projects, thankfully, your Unit 4 already talks about your language and talks about your projects. And when you do your project 4, I will suggest that as much as you also include English, try and make your project bilingual. The English language in your project will help you get better reach to different parts of the world who are doing DH. And the Assamese language will make your presence evident over there. Because with a discipline such as digital humanities, it's not enough to bring the world to your doorstep. It's also important to take yourselves to the world, to the doorstep of the world. Whatever project you are doing, I think one of the nice ways of working around such projects would be to make it bilingual. Make sure your project is in both English and Assamese, including the presentations which you will make in class. Please make it in English and Hindi. So at least keep one, the Hindi is for me and for the time being. You can, of course, later on continue working in Assamese, and if this department starts contributing significantly to digital humanities, it will become the owners and initiative of the world to come and understand what you are doing. But it's important that we start working in our vernacular languages. Otherwise, our languages will be lost in literary studies of the digital sphere. The fourth most important challenge that we constantly will have to keep facing, particularly because we are from India, which is a multilingual country, is to start archiving your own literary pieces. And it's easier said than done. If you start archiving, you can start archiving in many ways. I'm not just talking about scanning a book and making a PDF copy of it. You understand what I'm talking about. I'm talking about serious archiving, archiving with metadata, possibly archiving different authors, all works. Go author wise or go time wise. Either you start working on 18th century Assamese literature, then divide it into different kinds of authors, and then take all the works that has come under that person's authorship. It could be novels, it could be poems, it could be, I don't know, short stories. Start typing, digitizing, and archiving every work that you come across. And one of the best ways and most effective ways of doing it is, even before you start creating a tool, is first type it, digitize it, archive it, and keep it somewhere for future use. Do not start off by thinking that this is my project, therefore this is the tool that I will end up using for this particular project. Because supposing that that content does not fit into your project, what will you do? Will you not digitize it? Will you not archive it? Will you not keep it in your in your repository? My suggestion is go the other way around. First, digitize rampantly, archive rampantly. After almost all the works have been digitized, which as of now sounds like a real impossibility, you will tell me how impossible. I will ask you in a few minutes how impossible it is. But the point is, start digitizing, archiving. Just give Shushanta the একটা class নিচ্ছে একটু আসতে. Start digitizing, archiving, and make sure you archive as much potential content from Assamese language as possible. There could be different kinds of archiving. There could be archiving of literature, which is easy because often they appear in print and you just have to type it. Start archiving oral cultures. I am sure that even in Assamese, as much as we have it in Bangla, even in Assamese language, there are a lot of oral cultures, lot of folk performances, lots of folk songs, lots of folk traditions, plays, every other kinds of things. For every such thing, start archiving your oral cultures. Start creating metadata. Archive first, if it's an oral culture, maybe go around recording, digitize it, create your metadata, archive, and keep it. Later, you come back and start thinking what you're going to do as part of the project, and then you can create your own tools and work about it. You can start archiving, more contemporary issues by looking at social media. Many of you must be writing in the Assamese language in your Facebook, in your Instagram. Many of you must already be engaging in political debates in Facebook or every anywhere else. I don't know, whatever digital tools you use, which already exist as part of your social media. How many of you actually constantly practice writing Assamese in social media? I think most of you. Do you write Assamese in social media or do you write Hindi and English?
Yes, ma'am. Assamese.
Assamese, yeah. Probably if you want to look at more contemporary issues, start digitizing, archiving, creating metadata. First, archive, archive, archive. That will take how many years? You all give me a random estimate, a random idea. How much time it would be needed if you start archiving digital materials from today? I remember Dr. Neog was telling me that the Department of Assamese had already taken an initiative and has already digitized and archived a huge number of books. Remember Dr. Neog was already telling in class one day. But how much percentage of Assamese literature does it cover? Is there anything left to do? First challenge for any multilingual country such as India is the fact that we do not have enough digital archives to work upon. which will lead us to another challenging position. Many people from India will start thinking that digital archiving is digital humanities. And this debate will remain. Even till today, I go around debating with people and saying, is archiving a part of DH itself? There are many people who think it is. Archiving is so important that it is digital humanities itself. I personally think archiving is not digital humanities. Digital humanities starts after you finish archiving. But having said that, I understand the limitation of my argument too. That for a country like India, when half of the vernacular material is not yet archived, how do you start creating your tools? What tools do you create and what do you work as part of your content with such tools? So give me a random idea. How much time do you need? What kind of material can you archive? Please talk to me. Let me also understand, because now I'm talking specifically about Assamese. How much has been done? How much is left to do? How much time it would require? And anytime I ask this class, tell me the name of one famous author, you always come up with just one name, Lakshminath Bezborua, from which I have understood that he was an extremely important author. But it is also surprising that nobody comes up with a second name. Nobody comes up with the name of a woman author. I don't know how many women celebrated authors do you have in Assamese. Can you not have a digitally archived project about women literary figures in Assamese literature? Is it possible? I'm sure it's possible to do. But nobody tells me
Yes,
any
ma'am.
such name. Just tell me any one name of a very famous woman Assamese author.
Mamoni
Mamoni
Racham
Rasam
Goswami.
Goswami.
Can just one of you type it in the chat box? I followed Mamoni, but I couldn't follow the second half.
Mamoni Racham Goswami.
Mamoni Rasam Goswami. I'm sure she has written enough. Mamoni Rasam Goswami. Okay. I'm sure many of you have read her works, and she has written enough. How much time do you approximately need in archiving all her content? Is all her content already archived? That should be the first question. How much of her content has been archived already? Yes, just give me an idea. Otherwise, how will I talk to you about the challenges? How much of her work has already been archived? Has her work been archived? How much is left to do?
Probably most of them are left to do, I guess.
Most of them are left. And how much time would it require if your class of 19 students start typing and writing it down in some digital format starting from today? 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? What's the entire corpus of her work like? How much time would it take? 1 year, 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years?
It depends, ma'am. But I
No,
guess
I'm talking
at
about a
normal
random
speed,
speed. Yeah,
1 to 2 years.
1 to 2 years. So you see, so such big works already exist which has not been done. Digital humanities will start happening after you finish archiving. Then probably you want to look at the kind of writing that Mamoni wrote. So then you would probably figure out whether her writings can be read in some feminist discourse, or whether her I don't know, I'm just giving random examples. Pardon me, because I don't have an idea. I don't want to disrespect your tradition and culture. I'm making random examples. The point at which you start making visualizations and graphic images from her work, whether they have feminist tendencies, whether there is a class discourse, whether there is a gender discourse, whether there is a caste discourse in her work. So what you want to do with her works by creating your digital tools comes way later. The first thing is the work has not been digitized, the work has not been archived. After you finish archiving her entire work, you have to start creating metadata. Then probably if there are different editions of her work, you have to start creating such editions of her work. Then probably you have to create your own scanners and see how much of it is similar, how much of it is different. If it is different, why it is different, and everything that we keep on discussing later on. But the challenge is for digital humanities in India, the challenge in practice is at a very grassroots level. How much digital content is already available about the caste politics in Assam? I'm sure there is a lot of literary work about caste as an issue in Assam. Is there any one author you can quickly type in the chat box and tell me who has written extensively about caste? How much of class problem is already existing in Assamese literature? That if there's some famous author who keeps writing about class, you will want to first digitally archive. So what happens is, supposing there are 3 authors who wrote extensively about the feminist discourse. So unless you digitize all 3, you will not be in a position to take those 3 people's works, create your own digital tools, and then do whatever you want to do with them. Are you understanding what I'm saying? What we typically understand as digital humanities, where we create our own computational tool, and then we take some data out and try and see, say, for example, how the 3 authors' works have certain tendencies of feminist discourse in them, and therefore we try and create readings out of such discourse. We create contexts, we create supplements to such existing texts, comes later. What essentially is absent from the Indian subcontinent is enough digital content. We do not know what we will analyze even if we make our own digital tools. For instance, how much of children's literature in the Assamese language has already been digitized? I'm giving you ideas so that when you start working on your project, starting from your presentation assignment itself, you can start talking about issues. How much of children's literature has already been digitized, has already been archived? One of these days, I think Devashish or who was, who wants to speak? Please speak.
About children literature, not much has been done, ma'am.
So, sorry, can you please repeat the sentence again?
Not much has been done digitizing of children literature.
So supposing you want to do a project in which you see that for children's literature which exists between 1970s to 1990s, or let's say 1970s to 2000, that's how many years? 40 years? 30, 40 years? Supposing you want to do a digital project in which you want to see for the last 30, 40 years, there has been a complete absence of women characters in children's literature. It's a very common theme in all kinds of children's literature from the Indian subcontinent. When we talk about children's literature, we usually figure out one little boy called whatever, Ram, Shyam, whatever. How many women characters, little girls, exist in children's literature typically? We're not talking about exceptions, or we're not talking about characters when they are written by women authors. So there are many things which can happen. Supposing the author is a woman, then probably the character could be a girl. But typically, out of 10 situations, if there are 10 authors who have written children's literature, how many times do we come across very significant girl characters in children's literature in Assamese? Can you give me examples of very famous girl characters in children's literature in the Assamese language? You see, all of you are now thinking manually. If all the content was already digitally archived, all you had to do was type in and see how many of the characters were girls. Because once you would have archived this and digitized and archived this, you would have created metadata that there is this girl who's called Lakshmi. So probably there is a metadata around Lakshmi. Then you'll figure out that Lakshmi is a girl who appears in the works of such and such author. During the stories, her age is 7 to 8 years. She loves to go fishing with her brother Karthik or whatever. You see the problem. Do you understand the problem that I'm trying to raise in class? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
So half of the problem arises in your literary pursuits is because you're still thinking manually. And we are based off human errors. We are not computers. Computers can err. Students, can you please be a little quiet? I'm giving a class over here. Just a little quiet, please. Yeah. So as long as you keep thinking manually, you want to solve these problems manually, these problems will never get solved. Any questions, comments? Please speak back. I want to make this class interactive because if we're talking about challenges, what's the point? I tell you this is a challenge. Challenges should at least come from you. Questions, comments? How many historical bibliographies already exist in the Assamese language in digital format? 1970s to 1980s, everybody who wrote about class, I want a historical bibliography. These are opportunities that is there in front of you. These are the things you can readily sit and work on. How many historical bibliographies do you have of all feminist discourses that you have in the Assamese language? How many historical bibliography have you created for different needs, not just a literary need, about every person who has written about the NRC detention camp in Assam? Or will you keep waiting for some English writing journalist to come from either America or Bangalore? In this case, the situation is almost the same. And they will come to Assam, stay for a week, and they will make a comment as an outsider. And for how long will you be okay with it? Unless you start creating your own writings, unless you start creating your own discourses. Because people from outside don't know the reality. The reality is with you, the language is with you, the content is with you. I'm only trying and explaining what challenges are there, and if you try and solve those challenges, what better situations will you be in terms of your research works. How many of you from this class want to move ahead and do a PhD? Does not want to stop studying at the master's level? How many of you want to go ahead and study? Nobody. You are even quiet to this question. Please talk to me in a friendly manner. It's okay. I don't bite. How many of you want to do a PhD after this? And if you want to do a PhD after this, how many of you have rough ideas about what you want to work on? Very rough. It may not be at a very advanced, structured level. After you get enrolled in the program, your supervisor will tell you what to do. That's what our supervisors did to us. That's what we do to our fellows as supervisors. That's another thing. But do you have any rough ideas about what you want to work on? If you give me any example, I'll tell you how difficult it is to work manually on your very topic. Because at some point it is useless to talk about what England is thinking about digital humanities, what America is thinking about digital humanities, unless we start talking about our real issues. I'm sure from the Department of Assamese, you will keep Assam in your study. It's not as if you're going to talk suddenly about Rajasthan. It's not as if you're suddenly going to talk about the Ran of Kutch in your thesis. I mean, you can, but it will come in a context. But I'm sure all of you will compulsorily keep the geopolitical structure of Assam in your thesis if you were to do a PhD. And then how will you go about looking for your literature review? How will you go about looking for your historical bibliographies? Manually? That's what generations of people before us have done. Do you understand the sheer amount of extra unnecessary work that will go? One. Two, even after including that much of extra unnecessary work and time, how much error prone those results are going to be? Because the metadata does not already exist. You have to then and there assign some data to the text which you manually figure out. Which is why at the end of everything, even till today, our typical researches are a thematic comparison between the works of such author and such author. What implication does it have to the world of research? What seriousness or what consequence does it have? What level of advancement does it have to literary pursuit from any language, including Assamese? How much of the society will you turn around making it better if you do a thematic analysis and a comparison between the works of author A and author B? So there will be similarities in their writing and there will be differences in their writing. What is such a great deal about it? If you look at the random words of any two people, say Shantana and I start having a conversation about what tea we like, and say we have a very difficult fight about Darjeeling tea versus Assam tea. Since I'm from Bengal, I will keep talking about Darjeeling tea, and since Shantana is from Assam, let's randomly I'm speaking. Let's say Shantana will keep talking about Assam tea. What great benefit will it have on the future generation of tea lovers or tea as a subject? What's really happening in our research? Literally nothing. That's because we're still trying to create the premise manually. That's because still we can lay our hands on 100 books within the course of 5 years, and 5 years is as much as the UGC will grant you a fellowship stipend if you are a JRF. If you are not a JRF, then it's even worse because you'll have to do your own research. Even if you are a net JR, how many of you are aspiring to do your net? Because in your masters, you probably have started thinking about net. How many of you will hereafter sit for your net examination? Nobody?
No, we did actually.
Oh, some of you already. Yeah, that's about the right time to start. Even I gave my first net, took my first net when I was in my third semester masters. That's about the right time. So then what? You'll get 5 years of. If you end up being a JRF, you'll get about stipend every month for 5 years. But what is actually happening to the scope of advancement of humanities research in India? We still, how many books can you physically, manually lay your hands on within the course of the next 5 years? It's not as if in the next 5 years, the only thing you'll do is reading books. You'll end up taking a job somewhere, you'll work, you'll again come back doing your PhD. Today, what I'm talking is not really high, lofty theory, what you're supposed to read in books. Today, what I'm really talking about is, your practical challenges and difficulties. Thankfully, the title of today's lecture is Challenges in Digital Humanities. I really want you to understand the real problems, to not talk in thin air and talk about issues which are not ours. In the next 5 years, many women scholars who will be doing their PhD will also probably get married, will also probably get a new job. How much time will you have for manually scanning through books and reaching a certain understanding, reaching a certain result? In the next 5 years, many men in the class will get married, will enter new jobs, will have a family to take care of, will have ailing parents. Therefore, you have to spend much more time at home. Our parents will also start aging. They will not be as young as they were when we started off our master's first year. How long can we afford to keep doing our work manually? And at the end of 5 years, we'll think we have done a great job because we've looked at 50 books. But we've actually looked at 50 books when the possibility of looking was at 5 million. And the problem will remain because we have constantly worked manually, because we have not created a digital archive. And then we talk about big issues such as creating your own tools. Then we talk about learning Python. Are you already learning a programming language? You will very soon. I think you'll learn some programming language this course or whenever. I don't know how the course is ultimately structured in the department, but eventually you will learn some computer language. When we did our digital humanities, we were made to learn Python. At some point, you'll create your own tools. You'll learn how to create your own markup language. And if you have to take digital help, you'll still have to work on literatures and languages surrounding English, surrounding Spanish, surrounding other languages which are already up on the internet. But for your department in particular, which is a department of Assamese, how much manual work can you do, is possible to be done, and will yield an effective result even if you do for 5 years? Particularly assuming that when one person does research in a country like India, it's not as if research is the only thing that we do in those 5 years. I do not know about more developed countries. I can make an estimate about how research happens in more developed countries. How many of you can actually read 8 books in 15 days? I mean, do you understand the problem that's going to emerge? Evidently, we will
Yes,
end
ma'am.
up doing theoretical research at a very superficial level between the thematic analysis or that, which is a kind of research I personally hate. In a class lecture, had it been a seminar, I would not have used such harsh words. I would not have used the word hate for anything if it was a seminar. But by now, I am seeing all of you for over a month now. I know many of you by faces, at least those who turn your cameras on. And it's not a seminar after all, it's a class. Class is, after all, a space for interaction. You all come and tell me about the real problems and the challenges. The first thing which one has to do in order to create a better future for digital humanities is to start archiving in the vernaculars. Thank goodness that your department has started this initiative. Please start working on it from today. If you are not convinced, people who have not studied digital humanities, who have not learned about digital humanities, even as much as you have done, will never do it. If you don't do it, they will not do it either. Then there are problems of interchangeably using social media for a digital humanities studies. There will be a tendency of researchers coming up. You will see in your lifetime somebody who wants to work on poems, Assamese poems on Facebook for the last 5 years. Is that a digital humanities project? These are real researchers you'll come across, and I am telling you from my experience that these are the things you'll end up seeing. Some person will think that the person is doing a very digital research because he or she is working on the status of Assamese poetry published on Facebook in the last 5 years. Is that a digital humanities research? If yes, why? If no, why?
Yes, ma'am.
Nayan says yes. Why do you think yes?
No, ma'am.
Okay, Devashish says no. Why do you think no? We will start talking maybe at a jocular level, but it will end up at a very serious philosophical debate. Digital humanities is not cultural studies. If we are doing cultural studies on a digital platform, we're still doing cultural studies. That does not make our discipline digital humanities. So if you were to read poetry and do some analysis if it was printed on a book, and if you are now reading poetry on Facebook and doing some analysis on it, what's the change in the kind of study that we are doing? We're still doing cultural studies. It would be more interesting, however, if we were to analyze a constantly changing text. That would be a change in the epistemological nature of the text. Because in digital writing, that's possible. Say, for instance, Wikipedia, the text can constantly change. If you were to some kind of conclusion, that could be an interesting work. But what is actually any difference between reading poetry and doing a thematic analysis between 5 poems that have been printed in a book, in a magazine, and 5 poems that have been published on Facebook? Is it any different? Is the epistemology any different between the two kinds of studies? So, correct. Do not mistake social media or any reading and interpretation on social media as digital humanities. Not. It is still the same kind of cultural studies that we were doing in the pre-digital or the non-digital era. Are you understanding what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Nayan, particularly because you originally thought the answer was yes. We do have a lot of scopes also. We do have a lot of prospects. For instance, open teaching, online teaching, interactive teaching, flipped learning through digital media, teacher agnostic teaching through e-learning modules. These have cropped up. We will talk about these in details tomorrow because since the topic is challenges and the future, we have spoken about the challenges today. We will talk about the future tomorrow. We will extend the challenges and also talk about the future tomorrow. But more importantly, have you all understood what are the real challenges of doing digital humanities in India? If you have, can one of you quickly wrap up what you think is a challenge? Santana, do you want to speak? You have always been very quiet. You can speak in Hindi or I don't know. If you speak in Assamese, you have to go real slow so that I can understand. Which also reminds me, whenever you're starting to finally learn how to create your own tools, think about some real-time translation from text to speech or text to text. Think about some tool which can create some real-time translation. It will require a lot of background work because entirely the two languages, at least the source and the target languages of translation, will have to be completely archived to understand and make sense of what has to be translated. But someday down the line, if Google could have done it from one language to another language, instead of creating monopolistic cartels, is it absolutely impossible to have our own tools? Just say from Assamese to English. So you have to do it two-way round. First is a text to speech, and then is a real-time translation of the speech to speech, but one language to another language. Think about it. The problems will come from what challenges you are facing. Yeah, Santana, what according to you could be a challenge? You can speak in Hindi, English. Don't feel afraid, don't feel scared. By this time, if you have not understood that I am not a scary creature, then you are mistaken. I'm not going to scold. I'm not even in a position to scold any of you. I am not going to change your lives for the better or the worse. Yes, Santana?
मैम हमारे वर्नाकुलर लैंग्वेजेस में अभी तक जितने भी बुक्स आर्काइविंग होने चाहिए थे अभी तक हुआ ही नहीं है। वैसे हमें आर्काइविंग से फिर से स्टार्ट करना पड़ेगा।
करेक्ट करेक्ट। सिर्फ आर्काइविंग होना ही काफी है? आर्काइविंग के बाद क्या करना पड़ेगा? इमीडिएटली आफ्टर आर्काइविंग
उसके बाद हमें अपना डिजिटल टूल क्रिएट करना पड़ेगा।
और उसके पहले आर्काइविंग के बाद और डिजिटल टूल क्रिएट करने से पहले क्या करना पड़ता है? Create the metadata. Create the metadata. So one thing, why are we even archiving? We're not archiving because it's nice to see a website full of Assamese literature. We're not doing it for the visuals. We're not doing it for the ego that we have done so much. We're doing it for some effective purpose. Create a metadata. Archive, create a metadata. Archive, create a metadata. That should be the status of work for the next how many years? I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years. Parallelly start creating your own tools. Say if you have already created an archive and a metadata of 100 texts, that person start working on a tool based on these 100 texts. It's not a vertical process, it's a horizontal process. It's a spiral process. Everything should be happening together, otherwise the entire thing will get lost. Anybody else wants to talk about any other challenge that you face? Bichitra, can I see you? Bichitra, can you hear me? Or I don't know, Bichitra maybe can't hear me. Upasana? Even Upasana is not here. Let me ask Azizur Rahman.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, can you please tell me about any challenge in digital humanities in India?
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, can I speak in Hindi?
Sure, sure.
मैम हमारी भारत एक बहुभाषिक राष्ट्र है, इसलिए हमें यहाँ 24/8 संविधान स्वीकृति भाषा है। इसलिए असमीज लैंग्वेज में कहीं जब हम कोई बुक पढ़ते हैं उसकी जो कंटेंट है उसका रिलेटेड हमें और दूसरी भाषा में जैसे उड़िया और लाइक गुजराती लैंग्वेज में हम जाने से पहले हमें कोई अच्छी कंटेंट ढूंढने से पहले हमें वो मैम
Yeah, you're saying right. What you're saying is correct.
हमें वो लैंग्वेज बैरियर होने से पहले वो अदर जो वर्निकल लैंग्वेज है उसमें वो लैंग्वेज हमें समझ नहीं आते हैं, इसलिए हमें आर्काइविंग करने में से बड़ा प्रॉब्लम होते हैं.
Correct. But even other than archiving, what's the other thing we discussed in class today? Archiving is one very important thing. But before that, what was the first challenge I mentioned in class today? Anybody? Devashish? You always take a final lead in most of the classes.
Ma'am, probably you have said about the digital there is not much in the vernacular languages about digital humanities.
Correct.
I guess that was
Academic books.
we have to do it. Yes, academic books and research and other things. We have to do it in vernacular languages.
Correct. If you are not including your vernacular in the digital humanities discipline, then the world will never know that Tezpur University is doing this amazing thing. It's your responsibility to let the world know. And for that, thankfully, you are having an input from both the ends. You're having an input from the humanities end as much as you're also having an input from the digital end. You also have Partajit sir who's teaching you in the digital tools itself. So you do have a whole lot of opportunity now. And when we start talking about the future prospects of digital humanities, I think we can start talking from this very position. That if we want, we can have these kinds of courses in every universities. We can have more reach out programs. And for such reach out programs to begin with, it's important we have somebody speaking from humanities and somebody speaking from digital. But in the end, we have to create a generation when every individual can talk for both, so that the world understands it's not a posited kind of a structure for the digital and the humanities. It's not a question of R. It's digital is the adjective for the humanities over here. It's not a question of this and that. Yes, have you all understood? Any questions, comments?
Ma'am?
Who's talking? Upasana.
No, actually my net connection is very poor, so I was not able to join. Sorry, ma'am.
That's okay. Do you want to make a comment? What do you think is a challenge of the age in India?
Ma'am, we
I think she's again having some difficulty in connecting. There are so many people who have not turned their cameras on, have not spoken anything in class. I'm sure I'll get to see them during the time of their presentations. So for instance, Momi, I've never heard her speak anything or say anything, and I don't even know how she looks. I've never seen her on camera. Momi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what is one challenge that you think exists in digital humanities in India? Also, I can't see you again. I just saw you for 1.5 seconds. Okay, she may have got disconnected. I don't know. Anyway, then let's leave it at that. Tomorrow's class is again from 12 to 1, same time as today. We will start from today's topic and talk more specifically about the future prospects of the age. Okay? That then, have a good day, all of you. Bye-bye.
Okay, ma'am.
You mean?
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.